Ladies and gentlemen, we all love a good underdog story, and in today's video, we are going to witness how a 1900 rated teenager got a completely winning position on the board at a tournament against a former world champion contender. We are set in Italy in the Vergani Cup, currently being played in Cattolica, and our protagonist is Lorenzo Candian, who's rated 1966, going up against Nigel Short. 26-33, contended for the world championship against Garry Kasparov, and probably would have been a world champion if Kasparov wasn't his opponent. Nigel Short is recovering from a very severe bout of COVID, so we do wish him all the best. We do wish him well. This game has a crazy surprise at the end. There is a crazy thing that happens at the end of this game. And we're just gonna have to go through it. So the game begins with e4, and Nigel, by the way, Nigel has the UK flag instead of the English flag because chess.com is glitching and doesn't let me use the right English flag. So he's from the UK, but he opens up with the French. So he wants a nice croissant as an opening. Knight to d2 is one of the main lines against the French defense, and it's a way of defending the center pawn without actually blocking your c-pawn. So knight c3 can lead to the Wiener, very crazy opening here in the classical French, but knight d2 allows white to at least have the c-pawn to go to c3 to potentially build up a very strong pawn chain with e5 and c3 and connect 4. Black now has many main moves, knight f6 being one of them, attacking the center pawn right away, c5, which is kind of like the open Tarrasch, striking back in the center now with two pawns. Or, because knight d2 is such a flexible move that doesn't really attack black in any way, black can also play a lot of things. Black can play a6, black can play a modified version of a bomb cloud if black really wants to. But Nigel plays h6, which is again one of these just odd, sort of non-committal and flexible moves. The point of h6 is that in the future, let's say white has a knight on f3, black at any moment can play g5, g4. And as crazy as this looks, when you're a much higher rated player playing against a talented teenager, you actually do want to get a little bit weird with it. In the words of philosopher Northern Lion, you want to get a little aggressive, a little bit off balance, because at the end of the day, you're a stronger player, you're going to calculate better, your instincts are going to be better. So it's good to get people out of their comfort zone. But Lorenzo plays bishop to d3. By the way, Lorenzo he's the Roman Colosseum, because I don't have any photos of him. Nigel Short is Nigel Short. Lorenzo is the Roman Colosseum. Bishop d3 is the most flexible move in all of these positions. It's why you play knight d2. You support the center with the bishop. C-pawn will always come here, and this knight will be developed in a moment. Now Nigel plays c5, so he combines h6 and c5 as a system. White can either begin chopping the pawns or defend the center, and white does choose to defend the center. So at this point, black has many moves. Black can probably play knight c6. Black can play knight f6, but the thing is that after e5, knight d7, this pawn chain is really strong. Knight e2 can come. White just gets kind of everything they want here. Their position is really good. So rather than doing with that, Nigel takes on d4, and not just takes on d4, he also takes the pawn in the center. So he chops the c and d pawns into the d and e pawns of white. And when the dust settles, we have a position of an isolated pawn on d4. White does not have a neighbor pawn there. And black is slightly behind in development. So that's kind of what's occurring. Now, if you're looking at whether or not this is a free pawn, this move loses the game because you always have to look for checks. And bishop b5 check wins the queen. Even if you block with the knight, this knight guards the king, kind of, but it doesn't actually protect the queen because there's a pin. So you can't take the pawn. What you can do if you're playing black is probably finish your development, chill, and Nigel does that with tempo. He plays bishop to b4 check. White plays bishop to d2. That's actually a really interesting move. I don't know where we are from a theoretical standpoint, but we talked a little bit about queen takes d4. Yeah, queen takes d4 is now not met with this move winning a queen, because actually the white bishop blocked the queen. So I don't know, like I said, I don't know if this is theoretical, white could have gone back to c3, but white here chooses to just give up the pawn on d4, or blunders it. I don't know. I'm going to assume that Lorenzo did not blunder the pawn. So now, of course, Nigel can play bishop takes and queen takes, but instead Nigel's like, didn't you just lose a pawn? Now if you take on b4, I take with check, right? So, but now Lorenzo shows his point. Because he has a massive lead in development, he has 3 pieces developed versus 1. I'm not really counting the queen because it can be a target with various pieces in the future. Although you are under some pressure. Lorenzo here plays bishop c3. That's a really interesting move. First of all, you attack the queen, kind of. It's more like you're opening up this threat again. Bishop b5 check. Because this can't take the queen because it's pinned. There's all sorts of weird tactics. But also, you're defending your bishop with your queen. And you know, you got ideas. You got various ideas here. Nigel here plays knight c6 because he's not in actually any danger, right? Bishop b5 is now no longer a check. But again, we see the thing. Lorenzo is 4 pieces. He's got 4 pieces out. And they're attacking black's queen now. The knight is now attacking the queen. So Nigel takes on c3 because the king is worth more than the queen, obviously. You take back, and now the queen goes all the way back to d8. Okay, so black is just a pawn up. Like, it seems like the grandmaster has won the opening battle. He's just won an extra pawn. How the hell is this 1900 going to do anything from here, right? What does he do? Well, the 1900 plays bishop b5. He gets aggressive. He doesn't just castle lazily. No, bishop b5. Point being that even though the queen trade is theoretically possible here with queen takes d1 and rook takes d1, white still has a humongous lead in development. And white is threatening to jump in here with the knight. That could be really uncomfortable. For example, knight e7, knight d6 check. Like, I don't know. That looks kind of depressing to deal with. Black doesn't really have a lot of moves. That very well could have been the best thing to do, by the way, with black. Suffer a little bit for your extra pawn, but ultimately convert it. But Nigel decides to play knight to f6. And he's kind of like, well, you know, kid, you can trade queens with me. If you take this way, I'm going to go like this. Not a problem. That's fantastic. And okay, you can trade queens and I'll lose my right to castle, but if you trade everything, you're just a pawn down. I mean, at the end of the day, I am the world champion contender, and I don't know who the hell you are, so I'm just a pawn up. Everything's good. So knight f6, reasonable move. However, there is something here, and it's kind of hidden, and it's very tricky to find. So again, knight d6 check is nothing, because the king is actually going to go up, and shockingly, this knight has no moves. It has no moves. If you take on c8, okay, great, we just trade pieces. If you go back to c4, what are you even doing? I'm just going to trade queens with you and bring my knight to d5. Like, I have a completely solid position. So Nigel plays knight f6. But here, the kid finds something. There's something hidden here. It's a certain move. And it's actually an incredible tactical idea. You can try to pause and try to find it. The move here is bishop takes c6, which on its own doesn't look impressive. It's just a trade. We just said that trades are nothing here for white, right? B takes c6. But the kid finds something amazing here. Now knight d6 is extremely powerful. Why? What's the difference? You still have to move the knight. Your knight is still hanging. What has changed? You don't have to move the knight. It's a move that Nigel Short himself admitted not seeing. Now, probably pre-COVID, Nigel Short would have seen this idea. I don't know. I'm just... maybe the brain's a little bit fuzzy in recovery. Nigel is an extremely good player, but Lorenzo does deserve some credit. I mean, the kid got one opportunity. I'm calling him the kid, like in an endearing way. You know, the fighter in him found an amazing move here, and that move is this move, knight to e5. And black is much worse. Black is on the verge of being completely lost. So he defends this tactically. This move was not possible in a position where the knight on c6 existed, because if you did it this way, I would take your knight. I would leave your bishop there. So the move order here of this tactical idea to then drive the knights forward like this is incredible. And now knight takes c6 and knight takes f7 are problems. If you take, not only do I win your rook, the tragedy about this is I also escape. See, if this pawn was on h7 and the knight got stuck, this wouldn't work. The knight would just be dead. Black would get 2 pieces for the rook, but the knight has an escape route, and nobody can stop it. So the kid is winning. Knight to e5, and white is much, much, much better. And here, Nigel had to play like queen c7, and then try to like, you know, get something like this, and then allow the knight to come back, and knight g6 is still a problem. And now Nigel played bishop d7, which gave white a completely winning position, like from plus 1.4 to like plus 3 or something. So we have knight takes f7, which just forks. So he decided not to defend. I guess he was trying to sacrifice material. What he was trying to do, he was trying to play queen c7, and then if knight takes h8 here, you have check. You have an in-between move. So don't just greedily start picking things up, because you might actually still blunder, right? So queen c7, and now Lorenzo plays the best move once again. He plays queen to d4. And queen d4 defends this knight and also prepares queen c5 check, which is impossible to prevent unless you play c5 yourself. You have to play c5, right? Now, there is one and only one good move with the queen. It's not queen h4 lining this up. It's this move, queen f4. So Lorenzo's still playing all the best moves. Queen f4 looks like it does nothing, but it's setting up a sneak attack on this queen. You'd like to play knight to g6. If anyone's wondering, by the way, why knight g6 hasn't been played, it's because, again, you would be losing 2 knights for the rook, which is not good. 1 knight is fine. 2 knights, not good. So queen f4 threatens knight to g6 and winning this queen. So we have rook to c8. Now, rook c8 defends the queen. You still can't move the knights. So your knights are a bit awkwardly tied together. Rook d1, once again, the best move. Not lazily castling, although it's also okay. Rook d1, keeping the initiative burning. Another piece has come to the party to put some pressure. And black is borderline defenseless because the knight is now going to come back to d6. That is really the problem here. It's the fact that now that you can't take anything, you're still going to try to hunt everything down, right? So knight d6, knight g6, etc. It's +4. Like, white is completely winning here. Rook d1, game is, borderline lost. Bishop e8, good move. You got to get the bishop out of there. You got to put some pressure here. But now we already know the rook came not just to pressure the bishop, but the rook came to give a helping hand for the knight to escape. Knight d6, this is incredible stuff. He's playing all the moves to convert this position. Black's king is stuck in the center. The rook is stuck on the outside. If now the rook moves, let's say something, like rook d8, that queen loses a guard. Knight f5, pawn takes, knight g6, and you win the queen. So after knight d6, the rook cannot abandon the queen. If rook b8, the same problem. Knight f5, knight g6, and you're going to be winning that queen. You're going to win that queen. So knight d6, finally Nigel realizes that his rook cannot abandon the queen, so he plays knight d5. He goes danger levels with it, right? But the thing is, if you take the rook, it's check. So now the kid cashes in. He's just got a full rook up for a bishop. He is up in exchange, and he brings the queen back, and he attacks the pawn on g7. The king now has to move, or the pawn has to move, king back to f8, and now, after 23 moves, we have short castle, and black has absolutely nothing here. Nothing. If you're ever down in exchange, like a rook for a bishop, you need some sort of coordination, you need some sort of weakness around your opponent's position, you need something. White has no weaknesses. This bishop is bad. This knight attacks something but is constantly protected and can also be booted. White's going to hide the king in the corner and just advance the f-pawn and rip open the position, and the rooks are going to open up, and that's it. You're going to swarm in. You can either checkmate black or get this game into an endgame. The only weakness I suppose White has is this, but no. King to g8. Nigel just hides the king behind the g-pawn, gets it out of the way, and now c4, like I just said, booting the knight out of the middle of the board. The knight moves, and rook fe1. Now we've got a new target. We're going to move our rook. We're going to go after that pawn. We can also move our knight. We can try to trade queens. Let's see how Lorenzo decides to clean this game up. Knight to f5. Knight f5 is a good move, obviously, attacking the queen. And now we have queen a3. So queen a3 rotates the queen over. It's a good move. There's many good moves. You can also keep the queen here, queen f4, queen g4. You can basically play any move that doesn't hang a queen. Queen a3. The only reason I wouldn't do it the way he did it here with c4 is because the d4 square has now been granted to the knight. So when the knight rotates around, it has an outpost square, a square on the opponent's side of the board, obviously, that is from where you can't really be booted, and you have to, you either have to be traded or sacrificed for. And so now, obviously, rook d4 is not possible, and Lorenzo goes back to h3 with the queen to try to get rook takes d4, pawn takes, and queen takes e6, or something along those lines. He's a little bit losing the thread here. A little bit. He's like, I kind of allowed the knight in. And black plays bishop to f7. Just a move that, of course, if you trade knight for bishop, black is actually going to be very happy because this knight is actually quite strong. And after bishop f7 was played, I told you at the beginning of this video that there was going to be a bit of a plot twist, a bit of a surprise. At this point, Nigel Short won the game. You might say, what? I just did 15 minutes of an introduction for that conclusion? What? What are you talking about? Lorenzo Candian, I don't know, Italian pronunciation, his phone rang. Like out loud. Not on vibrate, it rang out loud. And according to the rules of FIDE, that is an automatic forfeit. You lose the game. Which is so tragic because he was completely winning. Admittedly, Black was like, it was going to take a little while. You know, maybe you got to go rook b1, you got to find a way to like trade this knight or something, but something. He was completely winning against a world-class contender. And I don't know what to say that hasn't been said already. Lorenzo, turn your damn phone off for the rest of your life when you play it in a chess game, please. Because obviously you've got very good potential. If it's clear that if you got such a strong position against such a strong player that you have potential, and you obviously will be a 2200, 2300 titled IM, GM, whatever. But yeah. And that is where our game concludes. Like I said, for White to go on and win this game, White would need to simplify the knights off the board, maybe get an endgame of rook versus bishop, or trade the knights, team the rooks up, and go attack the king with g7. Always make sure you're not blundering anything on the back rank. At this level, you would not be. I would love to have shown you an entire conclusion of this game. Don't hate me. You gotta hate the phone. The phone rang. And that happens. That happens, but that is a rule, and unfortunately, we have to abide by the rules because, you know. And the same thing goes for smartwatches, by the way. I think if you're not allowed to have smartwatches, but if you have a smartwatch and it beeps, any device that makes noise, that's the end. Unless it is in the possession, you're not allowed to have your phone on your person. If you have the phone in the possession of the organizers, then it can ring. It's just a security thing, anti-cheating thing. So I'm very sorry. You can vent your frustrations in the comments. But this was an awesome game where a lower-rated player gambited upon in the opening, I'm assuming, and didn't blunder it, got a huge lead in development, swarmed his opponent with a very nice tactical defense of a piece that seemingly was going to die, and then he was playing so damn well. But sometimes that just happens, and I had to make a video about it, and this should motivate you that you too can get good positions against people 700 points higher than you. Anything is possible. Just turn your damn phone off unless you're playing on the chess.com app. In which case, yeah, that probably is counterintuitive. But I'm sorry, folks. I'm sorry, but congratulations to Lorenzo on such a solid result. And, you know, hopefully we see him back on this channel in the future.